I definitely am a very emotional tennis player. One of my favorite celebrations, I try not to do it because I think it looks a little extra, but when the crowd is there and you're getting all of that energy from them, you kind of feed off of it. So it honestly, I don't even think about it. It's kind of like what my body does. I do try to tone it down now, but I think one of my favorites is this one, but I'd say a good come on never hurts. I'm Abi Rencheli, and I'm a senior on the women's tennis team. Tennis, I definitely found on my own because ever since I could walk or talk, I was with a racket. I don't think people understand how much sports sometimes can mean to people. It's been my whole life. Grew up in Florida, Sarasota, Florida, but we moved from Moldova when I was 6. I remember the good things. It was definitely a completely different experience because, it's more of a third world country. And moving here, we had nothing. And so my parents, I owe them everything for how much they've worked, how hard they pushed themselves to provide for me and my sister. It was hard. I think they don't realize how much my sister and I actually understood what was going on. My mom would have to walk us to school because we couldn't really afford gas. It was either gas or food on the table. A lot of that made me who I am today. I think the ability to empathize with people and understand their situations. And my morals, I think, are stemmed from that because seeing how much they put in, it would be kind of a disgrace and a disappointment if I didn't work as hard or harder to kind of make my goals come true when they were working so hard to make my goals come true. I think the competitive nature of the sport and how you're never really out of the match until the last point's over. So you could be down 10 match points, but as long as you win that last point, you're in it. When I kind of get towards the end, my dad makes this analogy. It's like a shark in the water smelling blood, So it's you kind of feel that you're that close, but when you're at the end and you're confident in your game and you're confident in what the work you've put in, then I think it's easy to close it out. My coaches remind us daily about this. It's not really ever about the score. You shouldn't really focus on what the score is. You should always play the same way, regardless if you're up or down. So if I get a little bit unsettled, I think one of the coaches kind of tells us to always breathe. I think that's a technique. It's so simple, but it's actually so difficult to execute when you're in a high pressure situation. If I have an emotional outburst or something like that, I try to just, bring myself back to the center and just say, okay, take some deep breaths, just reset, and then it's a new point, new game, just keep going. I'd say mental health is pretty big for me because, in Europe, it was never something that was acknowledged. It's not really a thing. And so growing up, I always tried to hide my emotions. If I was sad, I wouldn't really tell anyone. And so coming to college and seeing all the resources I had here, I remember my first time going to sports psych, I was so terrified. It was laying all your vulnerabilities out on the table was very scary. One of the things I really struggled with, especially being in the sport where, you're constantly being judged, I think body image was a huge one. High school, around that time, I struggled with eating and stuff like that. And it was, again, a secret that I never really wanted to tell anyone because I thought it would show weakness. I'm very thankful that I have an incredible support system here. My coaches were very understanding. They helped me reach out for help. They encouraged me to reach out for help. They worked around my schedule a lot of times to kind of prioritize that and, to get me healthy and to a point where I could be comfortable, sharing with people. And it's been a long journey. There's still a long ways to go. It's not really on match days that you lead. It's the other days that, you have practice, you do all the work, the workouts, the lifts, and when you put in extra work. I think that's the area where it's more about action than it is words. There's a really good quote Simon said, "It takes growth to accept your mistakes, but it takes maturity to deal with them." And I think I'm at this stage where I'm trying to mature and solve them through action. And so I think my leadership kind of stems through that. I think it's the small details that really matter. And again, pushing them on and off the court, I think, is very important for them to kind of carry on the legacy of everyone that came before. I got involved in Pack United initially my freshman year. Jada Daniel was the VP of the group, and she invited me to a meeting. I almost skipped it because I was like, oh, I'm so tired, blah, blah, blah. Like, I didn't really know what it was. And then when I got to the first meeting, everyone was just incredibly accepting. Like, I felt like I could voice my opinion even as a freshman. When I got there, I realized how much they actually do, not just for BLM, but also people who suffer from housing insecurity, food insecurity. And that's something that's really important to me, just from history of my family kind of going through that stuff. So I think that really kind of got me, and I was like, we could make a difference here.
Well, this is personally my favorite event. This is my third year doing it, and I think it's really incredible that we can get a bunch of student athletes together at the same time and just have an opportunity to give back and have fun doing it.
If I were to talk to a younger version of myself, I'd probably say just keep believing in yourself. There were a lot of times, moving from Europe to America, there were a lot of times where I was like, I don't know if I can play tennis. I don't know if, the lessons, we could afford them. And so I'd say just have that belief, keep going, and put in extra work when you can. Again, I think extra work gets you far.